Hi and welcome. Thanks for joining us this afternoon for the University of Tasmania's webinar on our law school. My name's Tristan and I'm the Manager for Engagement and Partnerships in the College of Arts, Law and Education. And I have with me today Professor Tim McCormack, who's the Dean of our law school, and Maham Akbar, who's one of our third year Bachelor of Law students. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that I stand on today and the land that our Sandy Bay campus here in Hobart stands on, which is the land of the Muwinina and Palawa people, the traditional owners and custodians of our campus. And I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. The Muwinina people belong to the oldest continuing culture in the world, and they cared and protected country for thousands of years. The reason that I give an acknowledgement to country today is in respect to our historical past as a nation. Almost 250 years ago, Australia was settled and colonised, which has given rise to many decades, centuries of trauma and suffering for the Aboriginal people. The colonisation resulted in forcible removal from their land. Our island is deeply unique with spectacular landscapes, with our cities and towns surrounded by bushland, wilderness, mountain ranges and beaches. And the university stands for a future that profoundly respects and acknowledges the Aboriginal perspectives, culture, language and history, and a continued effort to fight for Aboriginal justice and rights. I'd also like to, I suppose, just make mention of the fact that we are coming to you via a webinar today. We wish that, we could all be travelling and having conversations in person, but we are delighted to be able to connect with you online, and we hope that in the very near future we'll all be able to have conversations in person again. So I'm going to hand over now to Professor Tim McCormack, the Dean of our law school.
Thanks very much, Tris, and thanks to all of you for joining us. It's a really beautiful autumn day here in Hobart today. Sunny with mostly blue sky, a few clouds. I'm really sorry that we can't be with each other in person. When I look out my window, it's hard to believe that there's a global health crisis confronting all of us, a pandemic rampaging through our society. So please, wherever you are, stay well and safe, and hope that we as an international community get through all of this safely. I also echo Tris's acknowledgement of traditional owners of the land on which I'm standing today. They suffered a massive disruption when the British settled this heart-shaped island of ours. And when I think about COVID-19 and the threat it poses to our society, I can't help thinking about what happened to our Indigenous people when colonisation occurred. That was a massive disruption that entirely changed their way of life. But thanks for your interest in learning about the law school at the University of Tasmania and studying law here with us. Of course, we're going through some massive adaptation over the last few weeks as we move to delivering everything online and trying to support our students virtually rather than face-to-face as best we can. I've got some things that I want to present to you about why study law here at the University of Tasmania and the structure of the law degree. And then, as Tris has already indicated, I'm really looking forward to introducing Maham Akbar to you, one of our third year Bachelor of Law students from Singapore. Let's just move through the slideshow, and this gives you a little bit of an overview of the issues that we'll be talking about today. Why study law here? How's the course structured? What are some of the experiences that students have? And what about graduate outcomes and some key lessons for you to take away? We're the only law school in the state of Tasmania, so the only institution that teaches law at tertiary level, and we're right down at the bottom of Tasmania, at the bottom of Australia, deep into the Southern Ocean. We like to describe ourselves as the best little law school in Australia, and for 125 years we've been teaching law in this place. The University of Tasmania Law School is the fourth oldest in Australia. It was established in 1894, and last year we celebrated our 125th anniversary. I think throughout the entire period of our history, especially because we're the only law school in the state. Our primary emphasis has always been to ensure that we are a place of excellence in teaching and in research. And our commitment to our students as they come and study with us is that we want to make sure they're armed with the knowledge and the skills to be really successful legal practitioners, but also that they would leave this law school imbued with some of our core values, that the law is not an end in itself, but that it's a vehicle to attain a more just and more fairer society for Tasmania, for Australia, and for the world. One of the great things I think about studying law here, and certainly Maham will speak about her experience of this, is the special student experience that we try to offer. Because we're a smaller law school, we really try to build a community of excellence that stretches people intellectually, but also that provides for them socially and in a sort of caring and nurturing way. Our lecturers, our professors all know their students by name, they're all approachable, and many times when we speak to students who graduate from here, they say one of the great highlights of their time studying at UTAS was just how caring and committed the academic community was. We have some big strengths in research for such a small law school. In particular, we house the Tasmanian Law Reform Institute. That's a very big responsibility for us as a law school to host the body that has the official and vested with the authority, the official authority to propose changes to the law of Tasmania. We have some big research strengths in law and genetics, biotechnology law, health and medical law, and also in international environmental law, climate change, where we host the Australian Forum for Climate Intervention Governance. Some of the strengths in our teaching relate to our unique location in the world, the law of oceans in the Antarctic, biotechnology law, Indigenous peoples and the law, environmental law, climate change law and policy, and international law. I'd like to provide a little bit of an overview about the structure of the law course, just so you all understand that. But before we look at the slides which show us how the course fits together, there are a few things that we really pride ourselves on in terms of helping our students succeed. One of those is that because we're the only law school in Tasmania, we have unparalleled access to the legal profession in our state. That means the judges and the magistrates, the senior members and partners of the law firms here, the senior lawyers in the government departments, the Director of Public Prosecutions, the Solicitor General, the Head of Crown Law, the Secretary of the Department of Justice. Many of them, probably 85 or 90% of them, are graduates of our law school, and they're all deeply committed to ensuring that the law school is a vibrant place where students understand the practical realities of what they're studying. So we have guests coming in from the legal profession on a regular basis and opportunities for students to go and see the profession in practice, to view what's happening at the courts, to be placed with law firms for professional experience. We also have a great self-motivated and innovative student body that organise a number of extra activities for themselves beyond and outside the strictures of their LLB study. So two of those, for example, are the International Justice Initiative and the community organisation COMET. Both of them volunteer opportunities for our students. The International Justice Initiative allows students to be representing sometimes micro states from the Pacific Ocean in multilateral treaty negotiations on climate change, or giving advice to the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, and COMET involving students going out and talking to community groups in Tasmania about some of key legal issues and challenges for young people in our state. We also allow our students to explore some specialist areas of teaching and research, and I went through the list before, but oceans law in the Antarctic. Hobart is the city that is the gateway to Antarctic research. The Australian Antarctic Division is based here. The Commonwealth Scientific and research organisation, our university's own Institute for Marine and Antarctic Science. There's a very big group of world-leading research scientists involved in Southern Oceans law and policy and Antarctic research, and our students have the opportunity to interact with them. Two of our colleagues are jointly appointed between the law school and the Institute for Marine and Antarctic Science, and we're really proud of that collaboration. But there are a range of other specialist areas that we try to create opportunities for our students to engage in. We also, at the University of Tasmania, have a wide range of combined degrees, so students can study law in combination with a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor of Economics or a Bachelor of Business or a Bachelor of Science. And we're really working as an institution to broaden out that range of options even further next year and in the future. So we hope that students will be able to choose to do a Bachelor of Marine and Antarctic Science with law, or a Bachelor of Natural Sciences and Wilderness Studies in the law degree. And yeah, that's, I think, a real feature that we try to offer students from overseas as well as local. And then fifthly, we try to create opportunities throughout the course of the law degree to really develop excellent practical skills in advocacy, in collaboration and teamwork, in negotiation, and in legal letter writing, in leadership roles that enable our graduates when they leave the place to be much better prepared for life in the law beyond their graduation. On this screen, you can see the basic structure of our Bachelor of Laws degree. So in first year, we have all the pink blocks are our core law units. The white blocks, we allow students to do units from other degrees, and our grey blocks are the ones that involve elective subjects in the law school. The pink ones are all the units that a student needs to study to be admitted to legal practice, whether that's in Tasmania or any other jurisdiction of Australia, or in Singapore, Malaysia, India, or Sri Lanka. Our law degree is recognised for admission to practice in all those places, and these courses satisfy those requirements. We also allow students to come into the law degree on a graduate basis. So if they've already graduated in another discipline previously, Bachelor of Science or Economics or Bachelor of Commerce or Arts, then we allow a student to do 3 straight years and graduate in law. And you can see that we manage that by giving credit for the equivalent of the first year of the law degree study to enable a student to go straight into what here is called year 1, but in the straight law degree would be the second year of study. We also, as I mentioned before, allow our students to do a combined degree with another discipline, so they graduate with 2 degrees if they choose to. And the list is here: Bachelor of Arts, Psychological Science, Business, Economics, Bachelor of Science degree. And that combined degree adds 1 year to the straight law degree. So instead of 4 years, it's 5 years full time. And at the end of 5 years, a student graduates with 2 degrees from the University of Tasmania. Of course, there are also students who don't necessarily want to undertake an LLB and don't have any plan to be admitted to legal practice either in Australia or in their own countries. And so we allow students to study law units in a legal studies major in the Bachelor of Arts, and also in a legal studies major in the Bachelor of Justice Studies. Happy to talk about those options in question and answer later on if you'd like to ask me any questions about them. At the end of graduation, we offer students, international students as well as local students, the opportunity to undertake a 6-month graduate legal practice course. And this is a course that we really treasure because it's delivered by the legal profession, by judges and magistrates. The students who undertake the course appear in the Supreme Court of Tasmania and also in the Magistrates Court of Tasmania on a sort of fortnightly basis, 1 week in the Supreme Court, 1 week in the Magistrates Court, making submissions before an actual judge or an actual magistrate. It's really practically oriented, and the skills that the students who do it develop they also have been very worthwhile and helpful to them subsequently in their legal profession. Runs for 26 weeks from February through to August, and at the end of that, when a graduate of the legal practice course is admitted to legal practice, they are a fully fledged lawyer and able to go and work for a firm or a government department with that important professional qualification. I've got a really wonderful video here for about 1 minute and 20 seconds about the legal practice course, rather than show it and run the risk of it not streaming effectively for where you are in the world. Laith will send through a link to the YouTube version of this video, and I'd really encourage you to watch it, because it gives a very good flavour about the level of professional input into the program, and also the very practically oriented skills-based approach that's taken. And now I'm going to invite Maham Akbar from Singapore, and in our 3rd year, just to share a few things with you about her experiences studying law. Over to you, Maham. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, as Tim mentioned, my name is Maham, and I'm currently in my 3rd year of my Bachelor's of Law degree. Just like any other international student, when I came from Singapore, one of my concerns were whether UTAS as a law school is an optimal fit for me. And looking back, I have been reassured more than multiple times that it was the best decision of my life so far. So as Tim mentioned earlier on, that the UTAS school, since it's a small school, it works really it really is very advantageous towards us international students, because we no longer have that supervision at home from our parents, and coming into UTAS where we have smaller tutorial groups, smaller lectures, it makes the learning experience a lot more interactive, more engaging, and the relationships that I've borne with my lecturers is something that really helps me in a long way. And the lecturers have this open door policy that we can approach them at any times. And the small lecture groups make it a lot less intimidating for us to clarify any doubts, ask any questions. And in addition to that, the law school also provides a great academic support program for us international students in particular. It's called the International Student Support Program, the ISSP program. And these sessions are run by previous students that have successfully completed these units and have done well in it. And they run these on top of our normal tutorials and lectures. And in these sessions, we get to practice our exam questions, clarify any doubts. And it is a great way to make sure that we're on top of our academics. And not only that, but also the great opportunities that the law school provides us is because it focuses also on the practical aspect rather than just the theoretical aspect. So from the start of your law degree, since year 1, the law school will be encouraging you to partake in activities such as mooting competitions. So the law school itself runs the internal mooting competitions, and then you develop those skills, and specifically in stuff like mooting, witness examination, negotiations, and then the law school preps you to further expand these skills and compete not only internally but also nationally and internationally. And UTAS as a law school has a really, really good reputation of how we have excelled in these mooting competitions so far. And when I was in my 2nd year, just in my 2nd year, I was really fortunate to have the opportunity to represent UTAS in the National Baker and McKenzie Women's Moot in Sydney. And it was a great experience. I got to meet the legal profession in Sydney. I got to meet other students from various law universities. We competed with about 23 Australian law universities, and we came in 6th place, which I'm really, really proud of. And I think that it would not have been possible without the support that I got from the faculty and with the law school itself. Other than the practical exposure that the law school provides, the Law Society the Tasmanian University Law Society TULS is a great initiative that is run by students and it's supported by the law faculty. In the society itself, we have career officers where they ensure that us as law students are given the necessary skills that we require as aspiring legal professionals. Last year they conducted mock interviews so that we can get a dry run of how interviews go about when we are trying to look for a job in the future. We were also given skills on how to write our CVs and our resumes once we graduate. Also, the Tasmanian Legal Practice course coordinator visited us and told us what they look for in students, and it was a great opportunity for us to expand our skills that we would require, not only if we intend to practice in Tasmania itself, but also back in our respective countries. And the Law Society also has welfare representatives, which ensure that the law students in school remain physically and mentally sane. So last year we had a lot of free yoga sessions during health weeks, which allowed us to balance not only our studies, but also at the same time make sure that we are fit mentally. They organized mental programs to ensure that we know how to handle stress, anxiety, or depression, or when we're feeling isolated, especially because we're away from our family members. So in general, the UTAS Law School really ensured that we are well kept of, that they took care of us, and it really makes me feel like I've been part of this community, and it is a great experience so far. And I would really encourage any international student that is aspiring to be a lawyer or just wanting to study law to definitely opt as UTAS as the law school, because it has really expanded the skills that I thought I had to a much higher level, and I'm still learning, and I'm really fortunate for all the experiences and opportunities that UTAS has provided me with. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much, Maham. I was enjoying listening to Maham saying those things. You might be surprised to know that she was not paid to say those things. It's coming from her heart. But one thing I would like to say in response is that students like Maham that come to us from their respective backgrounds from overseas really enrich the diversity and the life, the social and intellectual life of the law school. And I'm really grateful for not only her, but others like her who see the opportunity that they've been given to pursue their educational dreams and throw themselves into all the opportunities presented to them to flourish as people as well as students in this environment. So thanks very much, Maham, for sharing, and I'm sure there'll be some questions of you in the question and answer session to come. Just a few testimonials from some students who aren't here to speak in person. One of them on the left from Salman Shah from Malaysia, who was talking about the International Justice Initiative. Sal was one of our coordinators of the International Justice Initiative in 2019. He says it enables law students to experience the practice of international law and policy firsthand. Sal was one of those students who went off to some multilateral treaty negotiations representing some of the small countries of the South Pacific and had a wonderful experience doing that. Sam Wilson in the middle there, he's our president of the Tasmanian University Law Student Society this year, TULS, the organisation that Maham referred to. And Sam's reflecting on the opportunity to interact with the judges, the prosecutors, the civil litigators. So many of the legal profession come to the law school to interact with the students because they reflect on the great time they had when they were studying here and want to do whatever they can to contribute to the life of the place. So we're really fortunate that some of our students make the most of those opportunities. And then Daniela, she's talking about the focus here on environmental law and and one of the great strengths that we have in research and in teaching. And it's wonderful that she has reflected so positively on that aspect of her experience. We have a number of scholarships for international students. We offer a 14% reduction in tuition fees for eligible students from the countries where the law degree is accredited for admission to legal practice, so Canada, Singapore, Malaysia, and in South Asia, it's specifically India and Sri Lanka where the law degree, our UTAS law degree, is accredited for admission to practice. The same arrangement applies in the Graduate Diploma of Legal Practice for students from those countries. And then we have a Dean of Law's Merit Scholarship. Twice a year we offer 4 100% scholarship or bursaries to eliminate fees altogether, and 8 50% scholarships. And we offer 1 each of the full scholarships and 2 each of the 50% scholarships in the 4 countries of Singapore, Malaysia, India, and Sri Lanka, where the LLB, the UTAS LLB, is accredited for legal practice. And we've had some really wonderful recipients of those scholarships coming through. This is the 3rd year we've been offering the scholarship program. Some wonderful recipients of those scholarships who I'm sure will go back to their respective countries and make great ambassadors for the UTAS Law School. As I was listening to Maham, I was thinking about the body of alumni that we have, especially in Singapore and in Malaysia, where we've had students for many decades coming from those 2 countries. And so as a consequence of that, some very senior people in the legal profession in both countries from graduates of UTAS, and there's a really terrific network of former students and graduates of our law school. India and Sri Lanka are both newer places for us, and of course we have students from other countries. I should have mentioned China. We have 7 mainland Chinese students who are unable to travel to Australia because of the coronavirus restrictions on travel. And we've been working with them online to support them to continue their study. And I know that we have students from other countries around the region as well. So let me just make a few observations about graduate outcomes for those of our students who come through the law school. We've got some very good statistics here. Nearly 86% of our graduates are satisfied with their law course. The national average in Australia is 82%, so we're really proud of punching above our weight in that respect. 81.2% of our graduates in the Graduate Diploma in Legal Practice end up in full-time employment. So many of them have jobs when they start, some of them do not. And the director of the course really works with those that don't to help place them into a job position. So when they finish their graduate diploma in legal practice, they're ready to go straight into the workforce. And our average full-time salary of LLB graduates is healthy, which is good. Let me just point out 5 key things for you to remember about studying law at UTAS, and I think it's coincidental that there are 5 students in this picture. But anyway, let's make the connection, even if it's entirely coincidental. I talked about our unparalleled access to the legal profession here in Tasmania, and I think that's a real highlight for us. It helps being small, it helps being the only law school here, because all the key people in the legal profession are not competing with any other institution for their allegiance, for their affiliation, for their time and energy. And that's something that we don't ever want to take for granted. We have a bunch of students who are really self-motivated and who've initiated a whole range of programs to offer other students the opportunity to develop themselves, to be engaged in community service, to become better public speakers, or whatever else the initiative is. And I think that's a real feature of the place and reflective of our community here, that's a little bit smaller than some of the big law schools on the mainland. We're able to explore specialist areas in our research and in our teaching that emanate from our unique location. We talked about some of those: environmental law, oceans law, and Antarctic law and policy. We also have a wide range of combined degrees that we only want to grow in the future, and the university is working on making some changes to the way it offers courses to students to free them up to choose their own combinations of degrees, and I'm sure the law degree will be studied in combination with other disciplines in even a broader way in the future. And then we really concentrate hard throughout the law degree to simulate practical experience. So teaching students about the importance of teamwork, about the importance of advocacy, oral advocacy, written communication skills, so that when they graduate, they're really ready to go into legal practice if that's what they choose to do. There are a range of resources for you, and here's a list that you can click on to: the YouTube videos, course flyers. You can speak to your regional development manager about photos if you want to use any particular, or you want us to take some for you. Some more information through your agents, and the International Course Guide, of course. I'm going to hand back to Tris to moderate question and answers, and I'm looking forward to hearing some of your questions and doing the best I can to answer them. Thanks very much, Tris.
Thanks, Tim and Maham, for sharing your stories. I think I've switched my webcam off just a moment. There we go. So before I go to questions from those that are viewing today, Maham, I have a question for you. That's my own question. I'd love to know, what are your career aspirations? What would you like to do once you leave University of Tasmania?
Once I leave University of Tasmania, I definitely want to be a lawyer. So I'll be doing the legal practice course. And in that course, as I was told when they visited UTAS, was that they will put us on rotation in different sectors of the law field, where we will get to practically experience what it's like to work in those certain fields. And then from then I would decide which area of law I would be willing to work with, because whichever one sparks my interest. Yeah.
Great. I'm sure you've got a bright future ahead of you. And Tim, this is another question that's mine before we go to those that are out there. I know you have a really interesting legal background. I wonder if you would mind sharing that with everyone.
Yeah, totally happy to do that, Tristan. Sorry I didn't do that earlier on. But I grew up in Tasmania. I spent the first 18 years of my life up in the northwest of the state in a town called Burnie, where the university now has the Cradle Coast campus. But back when I was a child, there was no such thing as a University of Tasmania presence in my hometown. So when I was 18, I moved to Hobart, to the big metropolis of the capital city of our state, to study law. And I remember it being quite, I mean, now I laugh about that, of course, but at the time it was a big change for me. I really, when I first started studying law, I imagined that I wanted to be a criminal lawyer. I'd had a gap year between finishing secondary education and coming to university, and I worked for my cousin who was in legal practice in Burnie, and he'd arranged for me to have an opportunity to go and sit in on a trial at the Supreme Court of Tasmania. It was a manslaughter case, and I found it fascinating to observe the whole trial process. I was in court for the week, saw the jury impaneled, saw the prosecution present its case, saw the defence present their case, and then the judge summing up to the jury retiring, and then coming back to hand over their verdict. I was captivated by the drama of the courtroom. I imagined when I first started law that I would be a criminal lawyer, you know, a barrister, a defence barrister, or a prosecutor in the courtrooms of the Supreme Court of Tasmania. But the subject that really captivated my imagination the most at law school was international law. I was really surprised by this notion that sovereign nation states would agree amongst themselves on limitations or constraints on their own behaviour. And so I ended up deciding to do postgraduate study. I left Tasmania, went to Melbourne to do my PhD. I had a postdoctoral fellowship at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, become very interested in the Israel-Palestinian conflict as a young postgraduate student. And that decision to study at the graduate level, postgraduate level, really influenced my future career. And rather than going into legal practice in Tasmania as a criminal lawyer, I ended up becoming an international lawyer. And intriguingly from my perspective, the area that I've specialised in is the law of war, and particularly the prosecution of war crimes. And now I'm the special advisor on war crimes to the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court in The Hague. And so I'm actually doing criminal law just on a slightly broader stage, or bigger stage and broader scale than what I imagined when I first started studying all those decades ago. Hope that's not too much information, Tris.
No, that's great. Thanks for sharing it. So I have a couple of questions here for you. So I've got a question. What's the mix of Australian and international students?
That's a really good question. We've got about 75 to 78% Australian students and 20 to 22% international. It varies a little bit from year to year, but it's usually between 20 and 25% of the student body is international. And as I said before, they mainly come from Singapore, Malaysia, India and Sri Lanka, but we also have some mainland Chinese students, Hong Kong, and then recently we've had students sometimes from other countries in the region, Nepal or Bangladesh, and also even from Canada, which always surprises me, but I'm happy to have Canadian students. So yeah, it's around about a quarter, I guess, or between a fifth and a quarter of the student body. The international students have their own student group. They have a representative on the Tasmanian University Law Society, TULS, and I think they do a really great job of looking after themselves, but also integrating within the broader student body. Maham perhaps could say more about that if you wanted to, but yeah, that's the answer.
Thanks, Tim. Maham, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that even though the international students population is about 20%, as Tim mentioned, but because everything is so integrated and because we're small, you don't really feel like an outsider at all, because the way that we're treated is almost the same way, or if not better. And the international student representative in TULS makes sure that all our needs are met and we are well looked after. So yeah.
Thank you. Okay, what else have I got? Sorry, I'm just scrolling down. So hi, Professor McCormick. Thanks for the great presentation, and from Maham too. Can I ask how many first years go on to make the second semester?
So who's the question from, Tris?
From Tara.
Tara, thanks for the question, Tara. I appreciate that. So when we have students enroll in first semester in first year, we usually retain about 80% of them. There's some students who do the first unit, which is called Introduction to Law in first semester in first year, that actually don't ever enroll in a law degree, have no intention of enrolling in a law degree. So that's because they're enrolled in perhaps a Bachelor of Arts in the Legal Studies major, or the Bachelor of Justice Studies in the Legal Studies major, or the Bachelor of Marine and Antarctic Science in the Governance stream, where Introduction to Law is a compulsory unit. So there's a whole range of different degree programs in the university where Introduction to Law is a core unit in first semester. So we can only tell what numbers to expect will go into second semester on the basis of those who enroll in a Bachelor of Laws, or who indicate that they're enrolling in something else and want to move into the Bachelor of Laws degree. And most of those, the overwhelming majority of those, 95% of them, actually do go on to second semester. And the ones who don't, it's usually not because they have failed the subject and gone home in disgrace, but because they've decided maybe the study of law is not for me after all, I'm going to go and do something else, study a different course. But thanks for the question, Tara.
Thank you. And Mariana has taken you up on your offer to talk more about the law as a major in other bachelor degrees. So, for example, in the Bachelor of Justice Studies.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Mariana. So we found that there are some students who come to us, come to study here, who don't want to do an LLB or they don't want to get admitted to legal practice, so there's no reason for them to do the LLB, but they're actually really interested in law. I mean, of course, you can do the LLB and have no intention to be admitted to practice as a lawyer, so that's fine as far as we're concerned. But there are some students who think, well, rather than do all those compulsory units that I have to do to be eligible to be admitted to legal practice, when I know that that's not what I want to do, or I'm actually particularly interested in an area of law that I want to study without all of that. So the legal studies major in the Bachelor of Arts, the legal studies major in Bachelor of Justice Studies give students the opportunity to say, I'm happy to do these units and I'd like to do those ones, but not all of those ones over there. And we've found that a number of students have chosen to study law units with us that way. We're also thinking about whether we should offer a diploma of law that might be another pathway into the LLB, or an alternative qualification, again, for people who don't necessarily want to do a full bachelor degree, but are really interested in studying some law and would like to pick and choose which areas, or would like to specialize in a particular area. So yeah, we're working on that possibility at the moment. I hope that helps, Mariana. It's enough information for you.
Thanks, Tim. This is a question for you, Maham. Donna says, I'm sure you've applied to other universities elsewhere. What made you choose UTAS as your study destination compared to other universities?
Thanks, Donna, for the question. I think the number one thing that really highlighted to me was the practical aspect of UTAS, because as Tim mentioned, we are the only university in Tasmania, and therefore the exposure that we get to the legal industry in Tasmania is excellent, because we have a lot of programs and associations that the Law Society and other lecturers invite guest lecturers to do, or just events like Meet the Legal Profession Week, where we have legal professionals or alumni coming in, such as judges and in all sorts of positions, and they get to share their experiences, and we get to know them on a more personal and deeper level. And that sort of exposure is something that is hard to get in other universities. And also the fact that we are given the practical exposure, not only the theoretical learning of the law from an earlier age. So when I went to compete in Sydney and I talked to other students, they were very surprised by the fact that I was only in second year, because most of them were in their final years, and they only get to go to these competitions once they're in their final years. So the fact that UTAS has inculcated these skills through workshops and allowing us to expose ourselves to these legal professions really shapes us into individuals that have the necessary skills required, and it allows us to stand out compared to students from other universities. So that's why I chose UTAS.
I think we're very lucky to have you, Maham.
Good decision, Maham. I'm biased, I know. Doesn't mean I'm wrong.
So I've got a question from Anthea. Hi, greetings from Malaysia. For students who have completed the Bachelor of Law degree overseas, if they would like to apply for the Graduate Diploma of Legal Practice, is that possible?
Yeah, it is possible, yeah. Depends where they've done their law degree, but it certainly is possible. And I probably need to find out some information, more precise information for Anthea about which jurisdictions are eligible to come and do the Graduate Diploma of Legal Practice. I'll make some inquiries about that, and perhaps through you, Dave Few, I could send the information to Anthea and let her know.
Okay, thanks. And a question from Inkay. Can a student go into the Bachelor of Arts and transition into second year of the Bachelor of Law?
Yep. So, I mean, this happens quite often. A student that chose to do the Bachelor of Arts, just enroll in the Bachelor of Arts, if they chose a legal studies major, they would do Introduction to Law and Legal Systems, the two first year law units anyway. So they could decide at the end of first year to transfer to BA LLB instead of just straight BA, Bachelor of Arts combined with Bachelor of Laws, and they would not lose. I mean, they get credit for everything they've done in first year. So they wouldn't lose any time. They'd graduate at the end of 5 years, just the same as somebody who enrolled in a BA LLB right from the start. That's one of the beauties of a combined degree, especially one that recognises the first year law units as part of its first year structure, because then a student can do that first year in another discipline and say, I really like the subjects that I've studied, the law units that I've studied. I would like to do some more study in law. I'd like to combine this degree with law. And I think it's a really great way to do it. Sometimes if you waited until the end of second or the end of third year in a Bachelor of Arts degree, it might be more difficult then to transfer to a combined degree, because you probably need to take more than 5 years, might be 5.5 or 6 years to complete a law degree on top of the BA that you'd already nearly finished. Be more like graduate entry into law then, rather than combining it so that you do a couple less units of law and a couple of less units of arts to get the combined degree. So I hope that makes sense, but certainly changing over after first year makes no difference in terms of the number of years of the course of study.
Okay, thanks. I've got another question here. For those who study law but don't aim to practice law itself, what are the common careers that graduates might pursue?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I've been teaching in law schools in Australia for over 30 years now, and I'm always intrigued by the range of different careers. So I've got former students who are prize-winning novelists and who tend to write about things with a legal twist to them. It's really interesting. Yeah, I can think of a couple of a playwright, filmmakers, but I think it's much more common for people who don't want to necessarily practice as lawyers, but who might join family businesses, having studied the law degree and understood the way the regulatory system works, to be able to give advice to the business about employment law, about workplace health and safety, about intellectual property. So I think there's all sorts of different careers in the private sector and in the public sector. Some law graduates will go into policy work in our federal government or our state government, or back home to their respective countries into government departments. Just understanding the broad legal framework, understanding the way legislation is made, the way a regulatory or policy framework is built around a particular subject area, and understand the way that all of that happens because they've studied the law and they're graduates in law degree, but with never intending to provide legal advice to anybody, and therefore not requiring a professional admission to legal practice. So I think that's one of the great flexibilities of law as a course of study at university. You can learn a lot of skills that you don't only apply in a sort of narrow sense of the legal profession in private practice with a commercial law firm.
Thanks,
Hope
Tim.
that's helpful.
It is. Now I have a tricky question here, and I don't know whether you're going to be able to answer it this afternoon. I'll ask it anyway, and we can take it as a question that we can respond to later if we don't know the answer to it. But the question is, normally if a student has done the LLB in the UK, they have to send the assessment to the State Bar Council to assess. The outcome is normally that they have to top up some single subjects before they can take the Graduate Diploma of Legal Practice. Does UTAS have the ability to issue the confirmation of enrolment for single subject enrolments?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, and we do that from time to time, Tris, actually. So it's not only for students who study in the UK. It doesn't matter where you study your law degree. If it's outside Australia, you will always have to apply, or it also applies reciprocally, by the way, for an Australian law graduate going to be admitted to practice law in, well, Malaysia or Singapore or anywhere. You've got to apply to to the bar association that admits you to practice. So they'll recognise some law degrees and not others. We for someone who studied law overseas, outside Australia, and comes to do the legal practice course and to be admitted to practice law in Tasmania, the Board of Legal Education is the body, the professional body with the authorization to say you need to do X. X might be Australian constitutional law because you've never studied a federal constitution before, or it might be property law in addition because we have a particular approach to the registration of land ownership and title to property in Australia, and you need to understand how that works. It might be criminal law because we have criminal code in Tasmania, and you can only learn about the criminal code of Tasmania at the University of Tasmania Law School, not surprisingly. So yeah, there will be sometimes or always at least one or two single units, and sometimes more than one or two, depending on whereabouts the law degree has been studied and the university that the person's graduated from. But yeah, we can certainly provide single unit enrollments for students in that situation who need to satisfy certain requirements for admission to legal practice.
Okay, and I think this next question is quite similar. If a student knows the bridging units from Legal Profession Board of Western Australia, can UTAS use that to issue the offer for students to complete the 5 bridging units with the grad dip legal practice?
We'd have to check with the Board of Legal Education in Tasmania whether they would have the same 5 requirements as the equivalent professional body in Western Australia. It's most likely that they would be exactly the same, but it's possible that the Board of Legal Education will say we only require 4 of them, or actually we require 6, and these are what they are. So each of the states and territories in Australia have their own equivalent professional board that oversees admission to legal practice, and you can't assume always that one state's board will have exactly the same view of what this student, because of where they've studied in the world, needs to do to practice law in this jurisdiction. That varies sometimes across the federation that is Australia. So I couldn't say for sure it will be the same, but I think it probably most likely be. Okay. And we can certainly, UTAS Law School can help put a prospective student in touch with the Board of Legal Education to find the answer to that question.
Okay, great. I've got a follow-up question from the question 2 questions ago. Can the single subjects, so the talk about the single subjects, can they be packaged up with the GDLP, the Graduate Diploma of Legal Practice?
That's a great question. Whose question from, Tris? I keep forgetting to ask because I
like
to.
Nicole,
thanks for the question, Nicole, wherever you are in the world. Yeah, that's one of the weird things about looking into a screen that doesn't show faces. I don't know who's asked the question, and I'd like to know. So, Nicole, the legal practice, while you are doing the legal practice course, you are allowed to do 2 elective units. So as long as the requirements for admission to legal practice don't exceed 2, you can certainly do them as part of a package of legal prac. Yeah, that's as I understand it, that's possible. If what the prospective lawyer needs to do, according to the Board of Legal Education in Tasmania, is 4 or 5 units, then it won't be possible to do them concurrently with legal prac. We need to get them out of the way, or at least 3 of them out of the way before legal prac starts. But yeah, otherwise it is possible.
Okay, great. I think that's all the tricky questions.
Easy.
Good.
We're here to help.
Oh, wait, no. Another Francesca, who asked about WA. Is that Francesca asked about? Yes. So Francesca has said, so I'll just submit the application for the grad dip in legal practice with the letter, and then it will be assessed.
Yeah, you could do that, Francesca, or the student that you're dealing with could do that, because the director of the graduate legal practice course will pass it on to the appropriate authority. So, yeah, that's a fine thing to do.
Beautiful.
Good course of action. Legal practice course this year, at the moment, is being delivered online. That's the first time they've ever done it. And there's the big challenges about how the practical side of things are going to be managed. But yeah, they're really proving very adaptable right now, and I admire them a lot for the attitude that they're taking. Tough times right now, as we all know.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to see how everyone around the globe is adapting and adjusting to the new, the very new circumstances that we're finding ourselves in.
Yeah.
So thanks, Tim and Maham, for your time this afternoon, and thanks to everyone on the other side of the computer for spending an hour with us today talking about the University of Tasmania's Law School. If you do have other questions, please follow up with your regional development manager or with us directly. We've really enjoyed the conversation this afternoon. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.